content. Yes, the meeting is being recorded, and 15 plus speakers and mentors across the creative industry that you can get up close and personal with and ask them questions. You will also be able to get first access to the Caught Creative app and hiring opportunities, which I will talk about in more detail at the end. So do stick around until the end for some exclusive goodies and discounts and promos just for FutureList attendees only. So just go to the next slide. And yeah, if this is your first time at a Caught Creative event and you're kind of wondering who we are, the people behind FutureList, we are a digital platform and app that aims to disrupt how creative professionals find work, get work, and collaborate to ultimately make themselves future-proof. And before we start, just a few housekeeping rules that I just want to relay to you guys. So Tyler will be presenting his deck in a short bit. So while he's doing that, please kindly stay muted so everyone's attention is at 100 and we all stay focused and listen to the amazing stuff that Tyler is going to say. In the meantime, though, you can definitely feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat box because we will be looking at those throughout the session. And also rename yourself. You can see examples. Tyler and I have done it as well. You can put your IG handle there and we can connect outside. Maybe you have questions that you want to ask Tyler outside or connect with him as well. That could be another way. So yeah, and you can also unmute yourself at the end when we have the live Q&A. So other than that, yeah, and I just want to introduce Tyler, our speaker here. I'm sure you guys already know him if you register on our website and stuff, but yeah, Tyler is really, really great. He used to actually be a ghostwriter for clients based in the UK for 5 years, but he actually recently moved into recruitment as an intern just in 2018. So actually not that long ago, but during that time, within 2 years, he climbed up really quickly and he became the strategy and development manager of a recruitment agency. And then now he is currently the founder of his startup called Transform Cultures, where he helps companies to develop better hiring processes with more of a focus on building the company culture. And he's also the board of the Recruiters Association in Malaysia to combat unemployment, as well as a mentor on the Primed for Success platform to guide young talents such as yourselves to navigate the working world. So I think someone really relevant today. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear some of the things that he has to tell us about fail-proof tips every job seeker should know. So I'm just going to stop sharing here. And Tyler, please take it away.
All right, so thank you so much for the introduction, Marisa. So let me just very quickly share my screen. All right. So what I want everybody to do first is to just quickly confirm in the chat section if you guys can see my screen. Right, just got the chat up. JG, Link can see. All right, cool. So everyone can see my screen. Yeah. All right, great. So I know it's a Saturday morning, and for some of you, it still may be a bit early, right? I know it's 11 o'clock, but hey, Saturdays is a different time zone for the rest of us, right? So I understand that, and I really appreciate you guys spending your Saturday morning with us. And yeah, so without further ado, let me cut to the chase and start with introductions. Because again, like the thing about digital events is we don't really get to see each other face to face, right? So I would invite some of you, if you guys want to as well, can feel free to switch on your video. Don't worry, I know you're at home and it's 11 a.m. on a Saturday. It's fine if you don't look your best, but it's good for us to have that face-to-face sort of interaction, right? And again, what I want you guys to do is very quickly introduce yourself in the chat section. So I'm going to type in really quickly. So just start with like some background about yourself. Like, what are you currently doing? Are you a student? Are you currently working? What are you working as? And what are you hoping to achieve from the session today? Right. So I'm going to start. I am an interviewer here to share my experience. All right, so I started off and I'll let the rest of you share your experience as well. What you're doing, feel free to plug yourself in your LinkedIn profiles if you'd like to as well. I think it's good that we guys keep connected as well. So while you guys are working on that, let me just very quickly run through the purpose of the talk today, because we have got 1 hour. Bear in mind, this is going to be pretty intense for 1.5 hours, right? So have your pen and paper ready to take notes if you guys want to, retain what happens today. Because a lot of the times people say that, yeah, I can remember that, but a week later you ask them the same questions. Nah, you don't remember that. Okay, so be honest with yourself. Okay, so cool. A little bit about me before we go into the talk today. So as Marissa has pointed out a bit earlier, I'm actually currently running my own startup, Transform Cultures. I'm also the board member for the Recruiters Association here in Malaysia. right? And if, in a nutshell, what I do is I'm a hiring process specialist. I help companies to sort of build their hiring processes and determine what's the evaluation criteria for each sort of position. And a lot of them happen to be creative positions. And also interview coach where I help people to basically do better in interviews and not to misrepresent themselves as well, right? So I've been featured in some media here and also some of the brands I used to work with. So again, talk's not about me today, it's for you guys. So let's move on, right? So by the end of this talk, you guys should gain at least a better understanding of the hiring process and how jobs are created, right? Understand the fundamentals of writing a good CV, understand the basics how to build your profile on LinkedIn, and also take home a pro tip to move your portfolio from from good to great, because there's a differentiator that a lot of recruiters will use actually, right? And of course, at the end of the session, we have Q&A. So please write down all the questions you have and ask me lots of questions at the end, because you only have me for 1.5 hours, sorry. Okay, cool. So without further ado, as you guys are introducing yourself, let me kickstart today's talk with a question. So what is a job? Does anyone want to take a crack at this? How you define a job? Very simply. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. All right, it's all right. I know it's a bit of a rhetorical question, right? A job, very simply, is the exchange of compensation, money and benefits for your time and expertise. That is, in essence, what a job is. Okay, and of course, people say like it's more than that. We'll get to know a little bit. It's a bit different from a career, right? A career defined is simply a combined experience in any particular professional occupation. So to just put you in the right frame of mind for the talk today, right? A job exists within a career path. So for example, if you started as a junior graphic designer, you became a senior graphic designer, then you became art director, for example. That's all within one pillar. That's one career, right? But let's say if you jumped across, let's say you started as a copywriter, you became a senior copywriter, but you also have done some design work in the past. Then you hopped over to design and you wanted to pursue a path more within that area. That's what we call career transition. And therefore now you have two careers, right? So you move from one career to the other. And why I say it's moving a career is because you don't exactly take over all the skills. That's not your focus anymore. You change your focus. That's why it's a change of career path. So myself, for example, I started in writing, moved on to recruitment. So this is basically my second career, right? So that's the difference between the definition of a job and a career that people tend to confuse a lot. Okay, so just want to get the definition out of the way. And why I think that distinction is important to make is because a lot of people assume choosing their next jobs, eventually it forms a career. That's not how it is. Career planning doesn't work that way. All right. Now, the hiring life cycle. Before I move on into this, as you can see, there are some blanked out areas here. There's a lot to cover. But what I want to teach you in this cycle is very simple. This is what recruiters would use, by the way, or HR departments would use to determine whether they need to hire and then how do they conduct the entire hiring process. Now, every company is different. It's a very nuanced field. It's very complex. But there are general stages that happens within the process that is similar across every company. Okay, so how is a job created? This is what they call the preparation stage. Okay, so in the preparation stage, what happens here is they will have a look at the entire company's talent needs, right? So for every department and for every team, they look into what the needs are for, let's say, this year or the coming year based on the financial projection, the business stuff, right? So from that whole planning, they'll determine, okay, where are we hurting? Where do we need more people, right? So when they determine, okay, there's a need within this team, right? The first things HRs will always explore is moving people internally. So that's in the form of department transfers, right? Maybe they move someone from this team to another team, or they'll look at promoting people, right? So promoting the team, let's say if a leader leaves and then there's a gap here right now. So they'll determine whether this team is ready for somebody to step up and take that management position and lead the team moving forward. So that's always what they explore first. And if they determine that there's a gap there, there's nobody that can be moved into the position, there's no one they can promote to take up the position, only then would they decide they have to hire, right? Or let's say the leader says that, okay, we have a lot of work on our team is seriously overloaded. We haven't been able to hit a lot of deadlines because we are really overloaded. And if it's reasonable, HR accepts that, then they recruit down the junior level positions as well. So those are how these jobs are created from the back end. And I feel a lot of people don't share this widely enough. So please do take note that is literally how a job exists. And why it's important to understand that is because you have to understand that a job is a business transaction, right? What is the job again? If I were to go back all the way, exchange of compensation for your time and expertise, because there's a gap in expertise in the company that they need to fill. That is what a job is, right? To the business. So when you go for your interviews, as you go about looking for a job, you need to be able to answer the age-old question: do you meet the expertise this company requires? Okay, so that's what happens in the preparation stage. So once they determine, okay, now we want to hire this many people in these departments for these positions, then they move on to sourcing, right? So after they define, let's say, like the job requirements, the hard requirements, what they'll like this person's attitude to be like, that's all happening in the preparation stage. In sourcing, that is when they would go through two avenues, typically, right? The first avenue that you see a lot is advertisement, right? So job ads, I see on JobStreet, Warp, now known as Hirely, or FutureList as well, right? Cloud Creative has listed a lot of jobs. So, they've also advertised jobs, which you guys can check out for creative careers. And yeah, so that's the first pillar, where it's advertisement and people be looking out. They'll just post and see how many people respond and filter through. Now, the thing about advertisement is sometimes it's slow, and that's where the recruiters will come in, right? So recruiters, typically, you can break them down into two categories. One is the internal team. Internal teams would use the title talent acquisition, right? So that's how you know whether the recruiter you're talking to is internal or if they're working with an agency. Agencies, they use titles like consultant, specialist, or recruiter. Like sometimes just purely recruitment consultant, right? So these are the difference in the titles. And why that's important to know is the external recruiters may not really know what's happening in the company. Talent acquisition staff, you can ask basically A to Z about the company culture. All right. So sourcing wise, there's two ways again. One is advertisement, where you respond to a job advertisement, or two, a recruiter reaches out and looks for you. And between the two, like 90% of the time, it's always easier for you to get a job if the recruiter approaches you, as opposed to you responding to the job advertisement, because you're 1 in 100 in that sense. Okay. So that's a bit about the sourcing stage. After that, we move into screening. This is literally when we look into your CVs, right? We start filtering through your CVs, we create a short list from there. Okay, so we say like, okay, out of these like 100 applicants, maybe you want to interview this first 5 first. These are the 5 that really stand out. So let's interview these 5 and proceed with the process. And sometimes when they're using recruiters as well, you could be 5 from the shortlist and another 2 that they have personally approached. And then they're going to pit these 7 people basically to compare against each other. Okay, and why this is important to know is there is absolutely no way you will know who you're competing against for the job, right? So it's pointless to try and compare yourself to the market. Focus on yourself, which I'll get into that a little bit further into the talk today, okay? So that's screening. Then comes selection. So once they put you through the entire screening process, the interview process, then they start saying like, okay, these are all the candidates who have interviewed so far. Do they make the cut? Do they not make the cut? If they don't make the cut, they'll just reject everybody and proceed with the next batch of candidates, right? But if they do like one person really, a lot, they think this person can do the job, that's when they start making a selection, and then they start hiring you, right? So when they start hiring, what they'll do is they'll pass you your contract, right? So offer letter is not your employment contract, yeah? These are 2 separate documents. Offer letter only means that this is the job. Do you accept it? If you accept it and you sign and you return it to them, only then do they start processing your employment. So until you see the offer letter, you don't really have the job. Okay, until you see your employment contract. And then last and definitely not least, once you sign the employment contract, you get onboarded, right? So then you join the team, you start working around your career, and towards the end of the year, HRs will start reviewing the talent needs again, and then it's a whole cycle all over again. So this is the full life cycle of recruitment that happens in most companies. There's always a stage where they review the talent needs. In startups, it'll typically be a bit more volatile because when one person leaves, it's a big impact. But if you're in an MNC, for example, 1 in 100 leads, you're still okay. You can take your time to recruit back because you have got a team that can bolster the talent needs for the moment. So that is the life cycle for recruitment. Now, again, because we only have 1 hour today, I'm very cognizant of the time, and I want to make sure I at least impart not just like surface knowledge for you guys. I want to really dive deep into one element. And if I can dive deep into one element, all right, sorry, let me go to why this is important first. The elements I'll dive in today is basically the sourcing and the screening part of the talk, okay? Because this is literally where I think job seekers exist within this portion. Because this is literally getting through your foot through the first door right? To make sure you can at least show up on their radar, and then you can have that interview and all that later. That comes second, but without this, you can't get the interview, right? So that's why I'm going to focus on this today for especially you lot, okay? Now, why is this important to know? Why is it important to understand the hiring life cycle? Throughout your career, this is literally the process you'll be working within throughout your entire career. When you change jobs in the future, as you grow up as a manager and you start hiring as well, you'll be using this process. You'll be dealing with the HR doing this stuff as well. So understanding this cycle is, I think, pivotal to understanding how to plan your career. Because if you don't understand how jobs are created, why it's necessary, it's hard for you to ask the right questions during the interview as well. Okay, so understanding this fundamental is crucial. This also helps you identify who's involved at each stage. Because, for example, right, preparing here is purely HR. When they start sourcing, this is when in between here, they start talking to the hiring manager, right, to work out what the requirements would be. This will be a future boss involved here. Screening, purely HR. Selecting and interviewing would be involving the hiring manager and HR, so on and so forth. So you get to predict who you might be meeting based on which stage you are involved in for that process, right? And you also know how to prepare for each stage, because when you understand what's expected of you at each stage and what they're really looking for to evaluate at each stage, it's easy for you to plan what information to put where. Because you only have that much space in your CV, you only have that much time during your interview. It's important you know what information to share at which point, okay? That is basically why it's important. And basic reminder, if you have any thoughts or any questions, list it down in the chat. Marissa is like, she's super on top of it. So you guys have any questions, she'll take note of it and we'll answer them at the end of the talk. Okay, there'll be like the last half an hour. So any questions and any and all questions, there are literally no stupid questions in my book. Okay, so feel free to ask away. All right, I will not judge you. I will answer your question. That's my promise to you. So now that we're going to be focusing on this, there are a few ways that companies would actually do their first sourcing and the first screening, right? There are a few funnels for them. So what documents would they look at when they first screen? I gave you the first one because it's pretty obvious, right? Everyone knows that you need a CV. Okay, or you're expected to have a CV for the first stage. There are two more. Does anyone want to guess what else do recruiters or HRs look at? Yeah, just type in the chat section. Again, no right or wrong answers. What else do you think people look for? Nicole Lian says portfolio. On point. That is one of them, right? Okay, I'm going to remember your name, Nicole. And if there's any questions for me, I'm going to answer them like first. So you get priority. Okay, who else wants to share? I love this lot. That is perfect. So your LinkedIn and your portfolio, literally in that order, right? So good job, guys. Like Ling and Nicole. Yeah, good job on that. JE cover letter. Yep, cover letter is also, okay, this is a bit iffy because only some companies look at it, but if you ask me realistically, not many companies will even bother with it. They just want to see it and then they don't really read it anyway. So whether you need one or not, probably not. Unless it's requested like in the job portal or something, then you got to do it. But otherwise, it's basically also considered a part of your CV, right? Because it's like the cover for your CV. Okay, so yeah, these are basically the three documents that are super important for you when you're looking out for a job. Okay. Now, why do they look at these three things? Your CV gives them your word, right? This is your word from your perspective. This is your experience and what you've done. So it's a form of self-report if we look at it from the research perspective, right? On the second part, your portfolio, this is basically evidence, right? So this is what you say you have done. This is the actual work you have done, right? And how that's important, which I'll cover in a little bit as well. And your LinkedIn profile, this is you in action, right? You in motion. Again, it's a form of self-report on your profile, but how you interact and all that, which I'll tell you a bit about how recruiters actually go through your profile. Or at least those who really try to figure out your behavior, right? So your CV, what should be in a good creative CV? Now, I unfortunately couldn't get a hold of a CV sample to show you guys that I think is good enough as an example. With their consent, of course. So those who are pretty good, they're not consenting because, of course, they're not looking out. So unfortunately, I can show the actual CV, but I've highlighted the pinpoints that are crucial for you to look at for your CV to be sort of good at least. Okay. Now, what should be in a good creative CV? You guys can give me your first idea. Like, what do you think is one good thing to put in your CV? Does anyone want to share first? Nicole, do you want to be first again? Experience. Yep. definitely experience. So let me get into that section, because I think like what you guys have figured out is the sections. Let me tell you a bit about, what's good to mention in each section as a general rule of thumb. Creative projects, yes, you can mention them. Now, let's go through it. First of all, and I think some people forget this, you really need to put your personal details on your CV. And that's why I can't reveal some of the CVs here today, because some information is, unfortunately, I'm bound by PDPA, right? So I can't share those informations with you. But what you need to have in your CV, your contact number, super vital. Recruiters, if it's easier to reach out to you, it's easier to give you the job. So give them your contact number. It only should be used for office purposes, otherwise you can report them, right? Your name, of course, as per IC, it'd be good. If you have a nickname, you can put that in as well, perfectly fine. Location, you don't have to give them your house address specifically, but you can give them at least the area that you're in. So if you're not comfortable disclosing your address, it's fine. You can put, let's say, like Klang or Subang Jaya, something like that, where they are able to at least discern which area you're staying in. And this gives them an idea of whether you're able to travel to and from the office, which is important for them to know as well, right? Email, of course, should be there, because again, they might have to send you an email invitation to the interviews and all that. So having all this upfront makes it much easier for them to work with you throughout the entire process later, right? And again, the easier it is to work with you, the easier it is for them to give you the job, right? And of course, link to your portfolio. So somebody mentioned that earlier. I think it was Alia, right? So your creative projects, yep, you can link your portfolio in your personal details section, which I recommend, because that's the first thing they want to see anyways, right? So put it in. Second portion is what I call your personal statement, where I think not enough people use this well, right? A lot of people write it in the formal third-party voice, which to me is kind of good, but as a creative specifically, it's usually better to communicate in a first-person voice so they understand how you communicate on the job as well, right? And what kind of work are you interested in exploring, is literally, I think the key detail you should put in your personal statement. So what environment of work, for example, you want to further your skills in, let's say, writing, because again, most of you here that responded and introduced yourself are basically students, right? So do you have an idea what you want to venture in, let's say PR, you want to venture into, let's say, copywriting, you want to venture into content writing, journalism, for example, which field are you interested in? You don't have to know, but you have to have an idea of what you kind of want to explore at least. And why this is important to state upfront is if it's aligned with what the job requires, you would be given extra brownie points from the very beginning, and this helps with the build up towards the interview, right? If it's not, at least you can look into the rest of the departments for the rest of the jobs. And sometimes what companies will practice is silent hiring. Some departments will be hiring silently, just looking out for talent. And if your portfolio sort of fits that department a bit more, they might interview you anyways and see if they have an opening for you, right? So that's a personal statement. Education and certifications have to be there. And okay, this is like kind of iffy, right? Because again, it depends on your field. If you're, let's say, a writer, if you have experience with like some software like Grammarly and all that, for example, some companies actually do look into that. Like, do you use tools to support your writing? Is it SEO based? So all those certifications that dictate that you have these skills and you have used these softwares, put them in. Very important to include them in, because that's literally some of the hard requirements for the jobs. Achievements, official and nuanced. So official meaning, let's say if you won like titles or you won competitions or stuff like that with your designs or your writings, put that in for sure. Now, the nuanced achievements are the ones that you probably have, let's say, in your university or in your experience or in your freelance work as well, right? Because a lot of students are freelancing too. Write down what are some of the achievements. For example, you delivered this design within a week when they're supposed to take a month. That's also an achievement, but it's nuanced because it's not recognized formally. But look, it's a win, man. You delivered the project in a short amount of time when it's supposed to take a bit longer, and you've done it well and the client's happy. For example, that's a very good achievement to mention in your CV, okay? Now, experience. This was literally the first one mentioned by Nicole, so yep, good job. Experience, so your internships, final year projects as well, especially for like designers or animators, right? Like this is something that companies really look into. Like what's the concept? How do you walk through? What's it like? What was important to the client at this point? What's important? What were you being judged on? What's the criteria to pass or fail and stuff like that? They look into all of this, so you can include that as well. Freelance work and part-time jobs, of course. I think a lot of people kind of downplay themselves during interviews more than they would actually oversell themselves, especially in this department. Because a lot of people would think that, freelance work or part-time jobs don't actually count as experience, but dude, don't discount yourself before the recruiter does it for you. Okay. Never sell yourself short. You have the experience, mention it and be proud about it. All right. Because freelance work and part-time jobs, guess what? You still get paid. So that's evidence that people are willing to pay you for your skills. Okay. Right. So that is the quick part about your CV. But what I want to dive in a little bit more is your LinkedIn profile, because I think a lot of students kind of dodge LinkedIn, especially creatives. Like, I understand there are more creative platforms, but if you're going for, like, let's say a corporate company, a lot of them are LinkedIn hiring now. That's one of the most popular platforms. So you got to be on there, right? And I actually have an example for this one. But a very quick reminder, if in case you missed it at the first point, link your portfolios, okay? Like, seriously, link your portfolios. Because if we don't see that, we probably won't even consider putting you forward to the next stage. That is why your CV has to have your link to your portfolio, if not like a downloadable link or evidence links of, where your work is displayed, for example. And what constitutes a portfolio, I can mention at the end of the talk as well, right? I'll cover that a bit later. All right. So halfway through, your LinkedIn profile. And again, I want to not make this like, a lecture. I think you guys get lectured enough on the weekdays. I'm not your lecturer. So very quick one. This is a LinkedIn profile of an intern that I have been working with. Quick thoughts. What's your first impression when you see this LinkedIn profile? You can just enter your thoughts in the chat section. Don't overthink it. Don't try to psychoanalyze it or anything like that. I'm not looking for anything in particular. Just want to know your opinion. What do you think about her profile? Philip says, nice. What do you think you like about it, Philip? Yeah, or anyone else, feel free to jump in. Your thoughts, just mix it in. Okay, Jay says, friendly personality. All right, so you're talking about the vibe, right? It seems friendly. Okay. Philip says the headline. Okay. So I help brands target Gen Zs through youthful content, PR, social media content creator, digital marketing, so on and so forth. So she actually lists down the things here, right? Which I'll cover in a little bit. All right. Adriana says, looks professional. All right. So like kind of clean and professional, right? Nicole Lian says, professional, actually stated her career goals. All right. Yep. Nicole, sharp as ever, which I'll cover that in a little bit as well. Vaish says, sorry, if I'm mispronouncing it, please correct me. Okay. I'm bad with pronunciations. Nice, simple, straight to the point. Yep. So clean and crisp. Alia says, very informative. Yep. All right. So this is a real profile, by the way. And let me break down for you what I think she did quite well in her profile here. First of all, let's talk about the profile picture, because like this is literally, it's social media, right? So profile pictures do count. And front-facing profile picture with clean and visible face, I think this is like the basic guideline I can give you what a good profile picture would be. Of course, some people have more creative poses and all that, and that's fine too. It really depends on the brand that you want to portray. But generally, as a student looking for a job first, for your first job, it's always good to keep to this guideline where you're front facing so they can see your face, right? Like if they're looking at you doing an interview, for example, that's what they want to see. Don't feel the need to filter or edit it too much. Like seriously, just yourself is enough. Don't worry too much, all right? Clean and visible, so it has to see your face. Try not to cover, don't wear shades or stuff like that, because again, people want to be able to see you, right? So you wear shades or you're like in like cosplay, for example, like nah. Like that can be for your Instagram and all that, but LinkedIn profile, nah, keep it clean, right? So you don't have to like necessarily suit up, especially for guys. You don't have to be in like suit or tie. Like you're creative, it's understood that you don't have to wear like a suit and tie at work. So you can just wear like smart casual or just a t-shirt. That's fine too, right? As long as they can see your face and it's visible. That's all. Right. Second portion of this is the personalized banner. So this, she literally went the extra mile to make her own banner. Nothing like super complex either. This is something you can do literally for yourself on Canva, as long as you have the software to do it. But I think she did this on Adobe Pro, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, look, if you're a designer, this is something you should definitely look into. If you're doing any form of design work or visual work, it's good to have this here. Writers, yeah, you could, maybe not as well, it's fine. You could go with quotes or something like that if you're a writer. But why you want to do this is basically, literally you'll stand out, right? Because if you notice how she reinforces her brand with her poster here, face, you see her face again, different angle, different, this time suited up, so more professional outlook. She mentions again here, PR, social media content creator, digital marketing, communication. So that repetition does help them to remember Monique and associate them with all of these words as well, right? So the association, You see her tagline here again, helping brands target Gen Z with youthful content, just Gen Z things, right? So you see the same vibe, and this is, I guess, the vibe she wanted to portray, right? You know, the more friendly, fun. So she went with like a different font here, which probably I'm not the best one, but May has a talk later. She is the font woman. So please go and see her talk later, all right? Now, there's one more point here, and that is her tagline, which someone pointed out, right? So she has a personal brand statement followed by her fields of interest. So look at this part. She was a student before, we hired her for our stories lab. And she said, I help brands target Gen Z through youthful content. And this is literally the fields that she's interested in. We being a social media agency, of course, we're gonna, be attracted to this title here. And this helps you attract the right sort of attention to your profile. It's a smart way to do it. And what I mean by attract attention to your profile, and I'll go through that in a little bit about where this visual that you see here will appear more as we scroll throughout your profile, okay? Now, that is the first section, which is your banner, your your LinkedIn profile picture, and also your tagline or your headline, right? Now, the About You section, it says about, but it's really about you, right? This is where you sell yourself. Now, there are a few sections to this that I will highlight as we go along. There's a certain structure here. But yeah, let me just very quickly read through for you, but I know it's a lot of words, bear with me. Daily routine turned into passion. Recently, I realized there's a lack of representation for Gen Z right now. As a Gen Z kid, I feel that most brands still identify us as similar to the millennials group, right? So she's mentioning a mischaracterization, right? We're certainly different in many ways and similar due to the digitalized era that we live in. I believe that brands can still further improve their ideas and content to target the Gen Z's audience. I mean, Gen Z is the next big thing, right? And she goes on a little bit about, her personality as well after this. Then she goes to say, so what can you expect from me? Trends, I keep up with most of the trends in social media nowadays. I'm also on social media 24/7. I'm not addicted though. Values and beliefs, as someone who's on social media 24/7, it's not hard to know most netizens behave online. Most individuals online hold values and beliefs, and they share together as a community. If netizens cherish those values, brands have to keep up too. Refreshing ideas, what more can I expect from a Gen Z? I'm here to offer more youthful content. And then she plugs herself here. All right, so first impressions for those of you who have been reading along with me, what are your first thoughts? Again, you don't have to science it out, but what do you think? So from your lens as a fellow student, or a fellow fresh graduate looking out, or a young creative, for example, and as an employee, what do you guys think? Okay, Sherman says, about you section, should it be first person or third person? Oh, okay, good question. So I can cover that a little bit. For creatives in general, I would recommend first person, unless you're talking specifically B2B sort of businesses. Then yeah, maybe sticking to a little bit more formal could work, depending on the clientele of the company that you're working for, right? So that's more like branding, right? And okay, why I recommend first person is it's like you're speaking to them, right? So if they're gonna read your profile and they're gonna remember certain points, and then you mention the same thing during the interview, that plays to the memory, right? It might trigger the thought again, like, oh yeah, I read this on your profile. You said this before. That's what a lot of interviews would say. And the reason they choose the words you said this before is because it's as if you're speaking to them, right? So that's like my analysis from the writing standpoint, right? That's literally how the interviews will behave moving forward. So Engineering Tan says, I can hear her passion for sure. Yeah, and that's the thing about writing in the first person, right? You can sort of inject your energy into this profile here. But to answer Shimin's question as well, right? When to write in the third person? For example, if your clients, let's say, I'm not sure it's entirely accurate, and Shimin can correct me if I'm wrong, because you have more experience with PR that for sure, right? And okay, let's say if your clients are let's say a government agency, or let's say it's PwC, right? You don't want to go too out there with the energy, I feel, because you have to reel it back a little bit and sound formal and professional. And that's when you want to write in the third person in your profile. If you want to work for companies like those, that's how you want to write it out, right? So that's a few ways to play it. Again, it's kind of nuanced and a lot of ways to do it. But yeah, let me get into the meat of Monique's one. So if you look into a structure, she has got basically 3 sections, which I'll cover here. So first part of it is always selling herself first, right? So you look at it, she's not selling her as a professional. She's selling herself. You already read her professional self on her CV. right? So what you look for in the LinkedIn profile would be more, insight into her personality. That's why recruiters will actually look through your LinkedIn profiles. They don't want to see the same stuff. So, give them a different angle here. So you have more real estate to, write about yourself. Because there's two ways that companies would look at your LinkedIn profile and your CV. One is you apply in with your CV. They'll read that first, and then they'll check out your LinkedIn profile, right? Or if they find you on LinkedIn and then they get your CV later and then they read that, right? So depending on which order that comes through, you could play with it differently, but understand that it's always two separate documents. So therefore, you could write differently on your LinkedIn as from your CV. It's not your CV, all right? So yeah, she's selling herself, why she is so passionate about Gen Z content, why she's so passionate about social media or, writing or content creation as a whole, right? So that's what she's selling here. Second part is, what can you bring to the table? So she literally says, breaks this off with, what can you expect from me? And she uses like, emojis to sort of like bullet point it because, content creation, right? Social media content. Keep up with trends, values and beliefs. She understands how that plays in social media. So again, here's not like the hard requirements. That's what you're going to share in your experience section, for example, right? Then refreshing ideas, emergency, offer you more useful content. So again, reinforcing her brand that she mentions up here. And what creatives always do, make it easy to reach out to you if you're looking for a job, right? So you want to contact me further, I won't recommend putting your number on LinkedIn though, because like, there's a lot of weird bots out there as well who will send you spam emails and everything and spam calls and spam messages. So yeah, maybe not your number, but just your email that you're comfortable putting out in the public. Just go with that one. And yeah, if you are on social media, for example, like this is perfect time to plug yourself, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitch, or wherever you're on, for example, right? That you have, let's say your portfolio, your work, or yourself in action. Yeah, go with that so that they can look into that as well. And that does accumulate as a part of your portfolio, right? Because I know some people, they don't like, they have a website or formal like, file where they have all their portfolios that they distribute. They just create the Instagram page. For example, if you're like an artist or a designer, for example, right? You just put it on like an Instagram page and then that's it. Or you have, if you're a writer, you might have like, let's say, for example, a Medium account where you write everything there and that's literally all of your work. Then yeah, just link your Medium here and then they can look through and that is essentially your portfolio, right? So understand your portfolio doesn't have to necessarily be a file or like a Google Drive. Of course, those would be kind of preferred. Companies recognize that a bit better. But if you are, if you are like, on a budget, then yeah, social media works too. Okay. So yeah, remember, plug everything and always like plug your portfolio, make it easy for them to find out where your work is. Okay. Now, let's talk a bit about the featured and activity section, because I think this doesn't get talked about enough. It's like one of the underrated parts, I think, of a LinkedIn profile, like seriously big time. Because your featured here is literally your content on LinkedIn, right? So if you've written a post before and all that, you can just pin it up here. There's a button to, feature on top of your profile, and this is where it'll appear. So as I'm scrolling through, it's literally, I'm seeing this first, right? I'm looking at this, and I'm gonna look at this. So this is where I see some of the work. So this is where I look at, her writing style, how she uses like, visuals in the writing to create the content, the tone that she adopts, stuff like that. This is where I like sort of analyze. And this is like real-time work, right? And I also see how she interacts with people in the comments, for example. Because what I can do as a recruiter is I can look at your activity. So if you look at my cursor over here, right? Activity, I can see all activities. So when I click on this is what I will see. So you notice all activity. Now, we don't just look at what you post. This is this part here. I also look at your interactions. So you see, I can see Monique Lau loves this. And I can see what you've liked, what you've commented on, who you've interacted with, how the interaction went. I can literally see all of that. And that sort of speaks to your understanding of how to behave professionally as well, right? So some recruiters who are pretty sharp, they will actually look through all of it, like literally all of it. So yeah, bear in mind, we will look at your interactions, how you behave in the public. Because for example, right, if you're going to be in PR, how you handle your public community speaks a lot about your ability to be able to do the job as well. So that's when it's seriously important. Otherwise, we also look at your posts, if you wrote articles as well, we'll look into that. So we can get some insight into your personality, what sort of topics you're interested in, what kind of work you're interested in. And if that sort of matches the vibe or the need of the company's content, Yeah, big plus for you. Okay, yeah, so that's a bit about the feature section, activity section. So again, I want to re-emphasize, we can see how you behave on LinkedIn through this, and there's no way you can remove this feature. Okay, there's no way you can block it. Unless you private your profile, then maybe I can't see unless I'm connected to you, right? That's one way you can do it. But if you want to make it easier for people to find your profile and to connect with you, you can make your profile a bit more public, okay? Yeah, so that's the feature and activity section. Now, experience. So, okay, Monique didn't update this yet because she's still working as an intern, but she will be open to positions in January, just in case anyone's hiring, right? So she's open in January, and therefore she hasn't updated this yet. But your experience section, again, short reminder, your LinkedIn profile is literally not your CV. So don't just copy and paste from your CV onto here. What you want to do is give them a comprehensive view. Because for example, right, if they find your profile on LinkedIn first, before they request for your CV, you can think of it that way. You want to give them just a short form, the juiciest points possible. So just like break down your, let's say like the work that you've handled and your achievements, just a key few. Less is more in this situation, right? So maybe 5 points each, that's enough. You don't need a lot, right? And like numbering it like this or putting in bullet points helps a lot because it makes it very concise and easy to read. Because you have to remember, like, recruiters are lazy, number one. Number two, they are keyword searchers. So the more keywords you hit off on the job descriptions that you kind of want to go for, the easier it is, right? Now, second part of it, let's say if they found your CV, you applied through LinkedIn with you applied with your CV first, right? And then they want to check out your LinkedIn profile. Yeah, they don't want to read the same thing because okay, what's different here? Like it doesn't add any value. But you give them a comprehensive view of how you would summarize things. It speaks your ability to report, right? So if you're reporting to your manager, you're reporting certain things. They want to know that you have the ability to compact or condense information and just give to them what they need to hear. So that's kind of what you want to convey here as well, subtly, right? So your experience section, again, keep it concise. Less is more, maybe 5 points for what you've handled, summarize your job or summarize your experience, and also summarize your achievements. Like if you don't have 5, that's fine, up to 5. But more than that, just commit to the top 5 that you're really proud of and you can talk a lot about. Go with those. Okay, if it's 1, if it's 2, go with that. But if it's not an achievement and it's like kind of stretching as an achievement, don't put it in. It doesn't help you. It actually liquidates your achievements after that, right? So think about it that way. Don't feel insecure, be confident. Again, not your CV. All right, so let's talk about skills and endorsements. So in my view, okay, Monique made a little bit of a mistake here. And Monique, if you're watching this later somewhere as well, what she did here was she didn't update this portion properly. Because in LinkedIn, right, you can actually list your top 3 skills. This is what will be shown before there's a show more button here. You see, so your top 3 skills will be displayed here, and that also counts with like the endorsements that you have as well. Okay, so in social media terms, this is clout, right? Like endorsements is basically like people saying that you're good. So like, yeah, it's like a review, right? So like if you have these skills, people vouch for you, then yeah, it adds a little bit of confidence, but honestly, it's not a deal breaker or anything if you don't have endorsements, it's fine. So just list it down, like the top 3 skills. She listed languages here, I think because she hasn't edited it since she was a student. But yeah, when I click see more, like this is why I think it's a mistake. This is the juicy part, right? Because we want to know that you have used like Adobe Stack, for example, or you have an interest in like social media specifically. Like this should be on the top, right? Because at the end of the day, like you're looking for the job, it's going to be like a skill-based position. Remember at the start of the talk, what I talk about, what a job is, it's a gap in skill. So display the skills that are most important for that field of work, right? Think about it that way. So Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator should have been on the top, and Adobe Premiere Pro as well should have been on the top. Like languages, you could put it at the bottom because like they just want to know what you speak, and that's enough, right? So prioritize. Your top 3 skills should be the top 3 that you're most proud of, and that is industry applicable. If we can summarize it that way, that's the key things here. But again, this is what we call tagging, right? So the more skills and skills that you list down here in your profile, the better your chances of getting someone to appear in somebody's search when you're looking out for people, right? So this is literally where all the tagging happens. So yeah, tag away all the skills you can think about, all the words that you can associate with the things that you use on your job. just list it all down here. Doesn't matter. They're not going to read all of it, but they're just going to look for the words that they want to look for. Like for me, I was really looking for like Adobe. So I'm like, oh yeah, she clicked all the boxes. All right, yeah, let's reach out to her. Right. So that's how you play the game. Now, before I go to your portfolio, a very quick summary, I guess, of the LinkedIn, I think it'll be important. And by the way, if I'm going too fast, guys, feel free to stop me and just let me know as well. Just let me know in chat, like just type stop or something, then I'll slow down a bit.
Yeah, also just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tyler, because
Sure.
you have some great points already. Just want to let you know that just maybe 10 more minutes before we go into the Q&A, because I think there's quite a few questions in the chat box. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll do it in 5. I'll do it in 5. So we got more time for the questions. I want to make sure that I can address it directly, right? So yeah, when I mentioned tagging, right, I think this is like super important. It just came to mind. It was not supposed to be part of the talk, by the way, but came to mind because I think this is really how you get your brand out there organically without having to like create content and stuff like that. Because that's probably a time for a different talk. But you see all the words that she mentioned here: PR, social media, content creator, digital marketing, right? Look at the words. You notice how it's repeated here. Gen Z is highlighted all around. Gen Z, social media, social media. Because when on LinkedIn search, right, as this pops up, more and more of it, it condenses. So that's how the search works, right? The more it's repeated and the more it's understood to be important part of your profile and your brand, like you will appear higher in the searches, actually, when recruiters search for you. Here, not so much. That's why I thought it was also a bit of a mistake, right? Not here. So in this section, it won't ping, but in title, it would. And skills part as well, this is all adding to the ping, right? So good rule of thumb, if you want to have a really nicely branded LinkedIn profile, think about the words that you want to repeat to attract the kind of attention you want. So that, when people reach out to you for jobs as well, they're not just going to reach out for just anything. They're going to reach out because like, yeah, maybe they saw something they liked and you have a similar interest, they'll mention it, and then you've done a good job in your branding, right? So as many keywords as you can repeat, go with that. And now, I understand we're short on time. Let's go to your portfolio. Now, I'm going to leave this on here for you guys to read as I'm talking, but please do listen to me as I talk, because most of the key points is actually for what I'm going to say, not what I've written down here. Now, portfolios are infinitely different, right? There's no structure or guideline that you can compare apple to apple. That's what I've learned from recruiting for creative positions. There are a lot of ways to do it. And if you're a designer, a writer, a creative artist, or if you are a musician, for example, your portfolios would look very different, and the platforms you use are incredibly different as well, right? So there's no way to give you like a one-all general advice here. But in terms of how you categorize your portfolio, at least what most employers will be looking for is you categorize it either by account or by company. So for example, if you work with this company, what's the work you delivered during this time, right? What's the work you delivered during this time? And the reason they want to know that is they want to know whether you're in touch with that style still, or maybe it's changed, right? They want to see that progression, right? So categorize it by company or by account. Account if you're a freelancer and, and they're your clients, for example, right? Or by style. So like, this theme of art, like, the more out there, outrageous sort of content, and then this is the more controlled, professional, corporate sort of theme content, for example. And then by content type. So maybe you do more, like as a social media marketer, maybe you do like design, you do writings, you do videos. So categorize it. This is writings, this is, pictures, this is video, for example, right? Send it as a link or, to your website document or your social media account, also fine. Cloud portfolio for some of you who are, savvy enough to, let's say, like have multiple like SoundCloud and stuff like that. You have different places where you can find different parts of your work. Link it all, it's fine. Make sure it's as updated as possible. So what we don't want to see is like your portfolio for like 5 years earlier, now that you're looking out for a job. Nah, like update it at least to like, a few months recency. That's understandable, or at least within a year. That'll be a good guideline, right? Make sure it's updated as possible before you send it out to them. Make sure it's easy to find your portfolio as well. So that's why I said, like on your profile, on your CV, everywhere every document that you have dealing with the employer has to have your portfolio on it. So that's easy for them to refer back. Because they're not going to look at it just once. They're going to look at it when they're screening, when they're interviewing you, and after that, when they're making a decision, they're going to look at your art and your work again, just to make that decision, right? So make it easy for them to click on all that stuff. And the pro tip here is walk them through your work, a lot of portfolios will just dump the work there. So we see the picture or we see the writing. We don't understand why it was written that way or why it was designed that way. So the best creatives I have worked with and hired were able to actually do this. They'll tell you from the start, okay, this is a project start date. What the client wanted was this. So we presented 3 concepts. This is the one they went with. Why did we choose this concept? Right? So once we determine this concept, all right, what did we break down? What was the branding here? What was the colors we went with? Why did we go with these colors? Why was it pieced together? How many revisions did it take? And finally, why did it end up being this? So from this to this, they walk you through the entire journey of how they came up with this design or this writing. So they can explain the work through and through. And honestly, this is what is like expected from like top class candidates. So the moment you can explain your work very clearly and it fits the process that they're looking for, you will automatically get the job, regardless of, like everything else. Your LinkedIn profile doesn't matter how beautiful it is and all that. They don't care anymore. You can communicate your work like this, they will work with you. So that's a pro tip I can tell you about your portfolio. Make sure you explain your work. Okay, so I'm aware that we are short on time. I will stop talking here. Final advice though is be honest with yourself about the work you're interested in doing, because most likely for creators, we kind of know already, right? But just bounce within this area of work, you'll get to where you want to be. Always be honest and sincere when you're dealing with people, because they will remember, and creators is a small industry, people hop a lot. So don't make enemies, be honest and be nice to people. And don't get comfortable. Keep learning new skills because your industry change incredibly quick, right? More digital tools coming up, more software, more social media platforms, for example. Stay updated, right? Don't stay stuck. And with that, I open the question time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tyler. That was super power packed. Thank you, everyone. Everyone has been really focused and also dropping a lot of questions. So let's quickly just move straight into the live Q&A. So Nat, if you can spotlight Tyler and I, and then we'll start going into it. So I did get a couple of questions. I'm going to scroll back.
Sure.
Just going back to like the kind of CV building part that you were talking about. So a couple of people did ask, is a recommendation letter necessary, and are photos of ourselves also necessary? Because I understand maybe some employers, they do like blind hiring, they don't really look at photos, or is that really necessary? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so let's start with recommendation letter. Recommendations letters are not necessary, but they are value adding, right? Depending again on the contents of the recommendation letter. So for example, if you're getting a recommendation letter from let's say an internship, if you've done an internship under the boss, get them to do a recommendation letter for you. It'd be good to tell them the scope of what they should be including in the recommendation letter. For example, like your work ethic, good to talk about. Experience working with you, your receptiveness to coaching, to improving your work, your timeliness of your work, stuff like that. Get them to write about those things. That adds value, right? So again, not necessary, but value adding. Second part of your question, whether pictures are important. There are a few things that I wouldn't recommend putting on your CV. One is your photo. 2 is your gender. 3 is your IC or your age, right? 4 would be your national what can your religious beliefs, ethnicity or religious beliefs. Yeah, that you can all remove. It's not required at all, and I don't think you should do it because it opens you up to discrimination, right? And sorry to say, especially in Malaysia, it's still a very commonplace thing that companies would do. So don't open up yourself to it. Don't include it.
Okay, I think that's a really great point, and thank you. Yeah, that's really like authentic, real advice to be able to acknowledge that as well. So thank you, and we hope we answered your questions. So the next one is Jia. So they asked, what about someone who's taking a plunge to a new career? Is previous work experience but in a completely different industry important, or is it going to be a distraction in your CV? Is it worth putting it in there?
Okay, this is where it gets like messy. Like I can't give you a good answer, honestly, but I can give you a general answer. Generally, right, when you're transitioning careers, if you, let's say it's a small jump, for example, you instead of doing graphic design, you're doing motion graphics, for example, right? You still develop the skills, but now you're animating it. That's an addition, right? So that's the transition. In that case, it's still useful to mention because those skills are still very relevant to what you could be doing next. Right, it's still part of your work. So in that case, yes, it's good to mention, and it's but just talk about it a different way, right? Like how will you animate this moving forward? Now, if you're transitioning from one field to a completely unrelated field, for example, if you are, let's say you're doing music, right, and then now you want to do
copywriting.
I don't know. yeah, copywriting, for example, right? Copywriting for an e-commerce company, right? Then yeah, it's not going to be, I don't feel it's going to be value adding to include, right? So in that case, it's kind of difficult. And I'll actually recommend if you want to transition into stuff like that, right? Where it's really far from your what you're familiar with, it's good to have like a few proof of concepts or, a few free works that you've done in the past first, include that in your portfolio so that you can see a transition and that you've done some effort in that area. That's the best you can do, honestly.
Right. Okay, thank you, Jia, and I hope you answered your question. Okay, so Gavin asked next, I graduated with a degree in engineering, but pursued a career in copywriting. So copywriting, just like you, Tyler, in the past, does it affect my chances in landing a job in copywriting? What can I do to improve my chances? So maybe, yeah, you can definitely weigh in on this as a former copywriter. What do you think?
Okay. All right. The thing about the creative fields is it's so fluid. I see a lot of creatives bouncing in between professions a lot, right? It doesn't happen within engineering or accounting. So that's kind of what's unique about like the creative fields like marketing, design, and stuff like that, depending on what you want to do. It's very fluid. Okay, as an engineer, moving into copywriting, I think what you can bring is systemizing stuff. Like, because that's essentially what you'd be getting throughout your degree, right? You train to think systematically. So like a copywriter with like a engineering background would write very differently from someone who's like, from the arts background. And that's consistent from what I've seen so far. So I can see that, and I think that would be quite true. Now, copywriting specifically, it will actually be beneficial, I think, right? If you can analyze, let's say, the keywords that are necessary, right? You understand the mechanics of SEO. It's always easier to come from a technical background and learn a creative skill as opposed to being a creative trying to pick up technical stuff most of the time, right? I know people are different. There'll be someone that can prove me wrong there, but I would venture at least 6 out of 10 times I'll be sort of right there. So yeah, take your your technical background, understand how to creatively, write something, structure it, and then you can add that flair later on. It's easier to do that. So I think for you, it won't be a problem. Again, all falls back to your portfolio, the type of content you've already done and written out. If you don't have like any clients or anything, it's fine. Write samples, put in your copy and break down why you wrote it that way. I think you'll be able to do that fairly well. Do that, and I think you have no trouble, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the sample thing is a really good tip because I think some people worry also, right, about not having the experience or whatnot, but just create your own like writing task for your samples and put that in. Okay, thank you for that question. So Lena asked, sometimes our strengths and skills develop over time and our goals and outlooks do as well. So would you recommend people to pursue a career that they want, but let's say they're not necessarily strong enough in those skills yet, or stick to a job that they'll excel at?
Oh, okay. Deep
good
cut
question.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a seriously good question. All right. Thanks so much, Lena, for that. All right. The way I see this, at least on the surface, is it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation. Because you think about a job that you enjoy, you're kind of good at it. That's why you enjoy doing it, right? That's one. And as you get better at doing something, you kind of want to do it more. So that's why I start enjoying. So that's what I mean by chicken and egg. It kind of goes hand in hand. But it's like kind of like a, how to put it? It's a complex relationship because it's kind of like, a love-hate thing sometimes as well. Because if you're so good at something and you do it professionally, maybe you start liking it a bit less. You find less joy in doing it when you have to do it professionally, for example. So that's what happens for, I think, some people who convert their hobby into a job, for example, right? Where they're good at it and they enjoy doing it, but it becomes a job and then they don't like doing it anymore. In terms of turning a strength and going into a career there, always that's always the smart way to go. If I'm thinking about it in a practical sense, you always do better sticking to a job where your skills are aligned with what you need to do, right? You get paid better, number one, which means you can spend more money on your hobbies or things that you're interested in, for example. Number two, you'll be more secure within your industry, meaning that, the chances of you being fired or, being retrenched would be low. Because it's hard to find a good creative. It's extremely hard to find a good creative. And that's why, like, places like Cloud Creative are doing a good job here. And yeah, I think like if you're asking for my personal point of view on that, me personally, I need to have a feeling that I can be proud of my work. So it's sort of a balance between the work that I enjoy doing, right? That I want to do like very strongly. I have to feel strongly about it for me to be able to want to go all out and perform well for it.
Yeah.
right? That's kind of how I choose my career. But if I were to advise other people, the responsible adult advice I can give you is compete where you're strong. If you're struggling to find a job, for example, right? Don't, I mean, this may sound a bit harsh, but I think it's time to lower your standards. You know, you're not, I mean, if you're not getting a job, then if people are willing to pay you to do the skill that you're doing, you're probably not that good at it. Sorry to say, but I think that's a harsh reality some people have to accept. So yeah, go with what is practical if you are in a tough situation. But if you are sort of doing kind of well where you are already, like the next step, I think, is to think about what you might enjoy doing moving forward. What will give you more fulfillment? What will give you more drive to grow? And what areas you want to grow in? Like that's when you can start thinking about that. But without taking care of the basic, the practical aspects of your life, like, you know, the job and the work and maintaining a job, or, you know, maintaining your business in that sense, it's very hard to think about what you want to do, what you enjoy doing as a job. That is the practical answer.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal world, isn't it? To really love what your job is as well. Yeah.
It's hard to keep ideal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Lena. That was a really good question to kind of pick apart and explore. So yeah, hope you answered that. Jiayi asked, so this is another kind of deep thinking, but this person asked, so are introverts at a disadvantage in creative industries, or is there a way that they can still harness their skills? But because it's creative industry is very show and tell, isn't it? So, but maybe with introverts and stuff, might be a bit difficult. So do you think that they are at a disadvantage, or maybe it's the opposite?
Okay, I love questions on personality, because that, okay, I'm a bit obsessed in that area. So okay, the thing about introversion and extroversion, right? Like if the MBTI personality test, I'm sure that's where a lot of people will be basing their understanding of introversion, extroversion is on that model of personality. That kind of fluctuates because that test is not how to put it, it's not consistent. It changes with your mood, it changes with the state that you're in, or the stage of life that you're in, and it accounts for age and all that stuff. So not to bore you with the research stuff, but it's not as reliable as, let's say, the Ocean point of view. So Ocean is like the also known as the Big Five personality test. So there they measure extraversion quite strongly. So extraversion will be simply defined as your social interaction with people, right? How social are you?
Right.
And social doesn't mean that you need to be outgoing and, you know, to speak openly as well. It just means that whether you prefer to be around people or to isolate, right? So how much more of you that you're able to share out, that's kind of extroversion. Now, introverts versus extroverts, it is not naturally a disadvantage or an advantage. It comes with both, right? So there are some advantages to being an introvert, some advantages to being an extrovert. Similarly, there are some disadvantages for both. Now, let's break down one by one. Like, yep, thanks for sharing that. Yes, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, correct. So all right, the general breakdown, if I can give it to you, is, okay, introverts, what are some of the skills that you have, or the advantages that you have? Number one, you can work independently, right? You'll be typically more independent than someone who's extroverted. You rely less on external help.
Yeah.
You can work silently or with a team, is fine. So you tend to be more flexible in that area, number one. Number two, the part of you is you can, most artists, I think, or most creatives will work in silence most of the time. Like we need that bubble, right, to do our stuff.
That's right.
And the more you are in that zone, the more work you can actually do. So at least this is not like universal, of course, but at least from my experience, what I've noticed so far is like the introverted creatives actually are better executors at doing stuff. When it's supposed to be done as an independent task. Like, you know, we just want you to deliver these 5 designs by Friday, for example. They are better at doing that than extroverts. Extroverts get distracted most of the time. Right? If you're working in the office, for example, they do that. So in that sense, it's something I've noticed. Now, as an extrovert, right, as an extroverted creative, you do better with collaborative efforts. Let's say like brainstorming and all that. You tend to be the one that's more outgoing, you contribute more to that aspect of the work, right? And you are more of like the energy giver to the team. Like you're like, you know, okay guys, let's do this, you know, let's do this. So you initiate stuff like that, where introvert won't. So you see like the different roles you can adopt within the team that would actually help you in your career. Really depends on how you play it. So
I love that. I think it's just like you mentioned. It's just different strengths that each of like introverts, extroverts have, and it's really just how you kind of harness those and amplify them to the best of your ability in those given tasks that, like you mentioned, introverts, they're good at, getting the task done, and they do a lot of thinking up here, right? And observations as well. So I think what Tyler is saying is it's not just a full out disadvantage. So don't think of yourself that way, Jai, if you are an introvert. I'm an introvert myself, so I think we're good. So yeah, if there's anything else you want to add, Tyler, before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think you summarized it beautifully. So
Awesome.
yeah, in short, yeah, it's not this and it's not this or that, it's this and that all the time. It's just find your balance.
Great. Okay, yeah, and the next question, thank you for that question, by the way. So the next question is by Alia. So many people are so interested to pick your brains, Tyler, so I'm just trying to do my best to go through them. So Alia asked, should our CV be ATS friendly? And if I'm not mistaken, does that stand for applicant tracking system friendly? Is that right? Or do correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Should it be ATS friendly? In this day and age, I would have to say yes. Reason being, a lot of smaller companies are also using like some automated systems to screen. The cheap options, and the cheap options, frankly speaking, are kind of dumb still. So they can't detect, let's say, for example, use like columns as opposed to rows. If it's programmed to read rows as opposed to columns, it can't read your CV, and then it just automatically rejects you. For example, right? So it's general rule of thumb. Okay, thanks for bringing that up, by the way, like ATS friendly stuff. Okay, so for your CV, right, what is ATS friendly? Black and white. So don't put like fancy colors in the background or like gradient colors and all that, because it might blacken out some of your CV because it scans always in black and white, right? So keep your CV black and white, or colors, or grayscale it, but never like a lot of colors in the background, right? So black and white. Second part is always left to right. So write your CV left to right. Don't go with like a sidebar column. That might confuse them. So some people like put their personal details in the sidebar, and then they'll write their experience and all that here. Then yeah, that structure would mess up the way it reads, because it reads left to right, and then they're like, for example, like your personal details, name, and then this is work experience. It can't recognize the fields. Yeah, so that is one other thing. Make sure it's always left and right. Don't use columns if you can help it. Third point is, as you're writing things, right, make sure that you use subheaders and headers a lot. It helps them to read and recognize sections. Okay, so that is what you want to go for. Make sure you use headers and subheaders to split your sections of your CV so they understand what it's reading. Okay. And don't use like fancy titles, I would put. For example, like Chief Creative Officer or something like that. Like, I get that some people are trying to be cute, but system can't recognize that. They don't recognize creativity, unfortunately. It's a machine, right? So come on, man. Like they can't read that. So stick to titles that can recognize, like social media executive or something like that. Yeah. So
those are really good points. Yeah, I think that's interesting, because with us as well, I think at Copywriting we do come across a lot of CV, because I mean maybe they think creative, so like they try and make sure that their CV is also reflected in like the creativity, and they put a bunch of colors and whatnot as well. So I think this is an important tip to remember as well, that maybe a lot of these CVs are not being read like manually by the person that's read by machine. So yeah, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind as well. So thank you for bringing that up, Alia. So next question, Philip asked, should low CGPA be included in the resume and LinkedIn?
Okay. So that depends on how you define a low CGPA. But if I understand from most companies, right, I rarely see it as a must-have for creative positions, unless it's like a sort of a technical creative position. For example, if you're an SEO specialist, or like if you are a animation student or something, then like your level of skill directly correlates with how you can perform on the job. So then only would I see requirements in that area. General rule of thumb, if your CGPA is below 3, don't put it down. If your CGPA is 3 and above, yeah, it's fine to put it in.
Okay. So below 3, is the benchmark, you would say.
Philip is in engineering. If you're in engineering,
engineering,
then yeah, man, like if it's below 3, that just omit it. If it's above 3, yeah, just flaunt it, no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, we actually got this question from Facebook, because we are currently streaming on Facebook Live as well. But someone dropped a comment there, so I'm just going to relay it to you, Tyler. But jumping back on the previous comment where you made about not putting stuff like identifiers like your sex or your ethnicity and stuff, this person said, doesn't excluding information such as that actually reduce your chances of getting the job as well? Or do you think no, not really? It's not that.
Not at all. If it reduces the chance of getting the job, probably it's not worth getting that job anyways.
Mhm.
That's how I see it.
Okay, yeah. I think, yeah, general rule of thumb, you don't need those kind of identifiers. Okay, Bernice asked, would personal creative projects in some way actually hold less value in portfolios in comparison to client work? So I know we mentioned before that, you know, if you don't have client work, you can do your samples, but of course, I mean, do you think that that holds less value, or is it something that is kind of implicitly understood by employers that, okay, like they're just starting out or they don't have work experience, so we'll these samples on the same level as well?
Right. Okay. So I'll give it to you in terms of two lenses. One as a HR, one as a hiring manager. Okay. So if I'm an HR looking through, most of the time, HRs would understand professional experience to way more than personal projects. Right. Again, but if you're a fresh graduate, like it's pretty much a level playing field. Like if you have personal projects, yeah, that's still taken as experience and taken into account. But let's say if you have like professional experience when you're fresh graduate, like of course it's going to be a value add, right? So that's how they see it. But as you progress in your career, you like, you know, maybe it's your second or third job after this. Then your professional experience will definitely weigh more than your personal projects for sure. For in a HR size. Now for hiring manager, and by the way, hiring manager is like the person you'll be directly reporting to, right? So your future boss. Hiring managers are the people who are skilled in those areas, right? So even that's why I think in creatives, like it's always important to know what the hiring manager wants as opposed to HR. Reason being, hiring managers can understand that work is work. You know, like for example, how much time it takes you to develop this design versus the other design. They recognize the skill, they recognize technique, they recognize the level of effort put in. So in that sense, it's kind of seen eye to eye as long as you have done the work, right? That is work done to them still. So I noticed that does way sort of similarly to a lot of hiring managers I work with at least. But again, if you can explain your work, it really doesn't matter which one comes first. If you can explain why this concept and why this works, how people responded to it, for example, same thing. Yeah. So to HRs, it will weigh more. To hiring managers, depends on the hiring manager.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was really clear. Thank you so much. And for the question, Bernice, and for answering that, Tyler. Okay, so couple more. So Nicole asked, you mentioned that recruiters are lazy people, quote unquote lazy people. If that's so, is it still okay to write such long passages in the about you section, such as what Monique did in the example that you gave? Because based on my experience, some employers don't bother to read long passages and jump straight to the experience and skills section. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yep. Okay, yeah. So thanks for bringing it up. And yeah, here's the thing about like recruiters. Coming from that background myself, I honestly understand that it's sometimes it's glorified. You know, that what the recruiter wants really doesn't really matter because most of the time recruiters don't put in the work to understand what is really necessary for the position. That is the brutal, honest truth. So okay, writing the long passage like Monique, right? Why she chose to do that is it's a value add branding. So because, for example, like social media, part of the work in that portfolio encapsulates a few things. One is your copywriting skills. Second is, you know, some design skills, scheduling, posting content themes. So like how you write speaks to that. So, you know, for creative managers, sometimes if they have the time, you know, for smaller companies, most of them will actually go through everything. They can be quite thorough. So that's when it will add value, right? But for example, if let's say you know, you're dealing with like a more corporate company, then yeah, they just skip over most of the time. Yeah, so corporate teams or internal teams, they tend to skip over because like HRs are not interested in that stuff. They don't get it. The creative managers, hiring managers, they will. Right. So it depends on who's looking. And it's always better to appeal to the hiring manager. And again, like HRs and recruiters, you don't necessarily need to please them most of the time. You just need to hit the keywords and that's enough to satisfy them.
I think it also helps with the, like you mentioned, the SEO, or is it not SEO, but like being if you include certain parts in your about you as well, it helps you be more visible when in searches as well, right? Yeah, so it helps in that regard.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for that question. So now we're gonna move on to Steph. We have just a couple minutes left for the Q&A. So thank you everyone for being so focused. But stick around because I have goodies for you guys. So stay till the end. So Steph asked, Hi, Tyler. What are your thoughts on staying consistent with personal branding versus going with the trends and becoming more marketable?
Okay, so this is, I guess, to my earlier point what I mentioned, it's usually better to draw internally rather than try to compare yourself to what's in the market, right? Okay, to me, because you're asking one of my thoughts, right? Okay, so to me, it's usually better to stay consistent with your personal brand. Reason being, all the time they're dealing with you. Trends come and go. Content-wise, you can write on trends, but it also has to be something that people can associate with you, right? Because if I think at it from the creative perspective, like your name really matters a lot, especially in like certain industries, right? So in PR, for example, like your name means everything, right? So keep to your personal brand so people recognize it and they know that, for example, certain things or certain styles, this person's really good, right? If you try to hop on a trend that doesn't really match with that style of what you're doing, it becomes incongruent and people think like, what are you doing? And you see this with a lot of, let's say, like artists, like, popular artists, for example, like their fan base gets outraged because they're trying to do something that's different, right? So understand that, by sticking to a certain brand and it is universally true to you, people recognize it more and people respect it more, right? If you write on trends all the time, like people are just like, all right, yeah, that's what's happening out there, but what about you?
Yeah, that's really solid. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hope that answers your question, Steph. Okay, and we're nearing the end now. So just two more questions that I see. Ling asks, good to see you here, Ling. If you have a job experience in a certain skill, for example, project management, do you think it's worth getting a formal certification?
Okay, project management wise, are you planning to become a project manager? Because if you are, then it does matter, professionally speaking. Because I think the absolute basic for project managers that companies will accept is PMO, right? Your project management officer, or I can't remember what the exact title was anymore. But if you plan to like specifically a professional project manager, then yes, you need that. Otherwise, nah, it's a bonus really.
So, okay, very clear. Okay, and then the last question before I let you guys in on some exclusive discounts for future list attendees only, stick to the end, is a question from Alia. Again, thank you for the question. So she asked, should participations be included in the CV saying that we joined a competition related to the industry but didn't actually win? Is it worth putting that in?
Okay, this is why I go back onto the general rule of less is more, right? So if you've been participating but you never won as well, it's fine. But you probably won't list it under achievements, but like competitions participated, for example, right? So like achievements you participated, like in that sense, like you think about the words, you don't associate the two together, right? Like participate and achieve, like nah.
Yeah.
But if you won and you achieve, yeah, makes sense, right? So put in a separate column, like like you've been active, like activities or something like that. Create a different column. Put that under that, then it's fine.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, I think that concludes okay, Jashan, you just made it into the last one. I will entertain your question, but just one more. Okay, so Jashan.
Okay, final question.
Yes, final question. So I would like to ask if it's necessary to add software skills and interests in our CV. If we added it in, will we have higher chances to get hired? I think we did cover this in earlier, right? You mentioned it's always good to add software skills and interest. Do you have to bother putting your interests or hobbies? Maybe you can comment on that.
Right. I think Jashan was probably grabbing coffee when I was saying that. So all right. Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, it always helps to put it in, like especially the software skills, like because that's a hard skill, right? It's something you have hard experience with using, and that takes time to train and all that, which some people might not be able to pick up. So the fact that you have used it, big plus. Yeah, no worries, Yashin. I understand.
No worries,
it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday. It's not a weekday. I'm not going to judge you. Don't worry.
Yeah. So hard skills on software skills, yes. But what about hobbies?
Interest, yeah. Remember, like Monique's profile, like she mentioned at least the areas of work that she's interested in. Good to mention interest as well, because like your interests are somewhat grouped within a similar field. So just mention it so that people, when they see it, it adds value. Yeah, don't have the the FOMO, the fear of missing out on other opportunities. Because like, look, if you're not realistically sort of interested at least in exploring in that area, you're gonna suffer in that area anyways. So why do you want to go down that route?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. And now I will share my screen and tell you guys about some of the exciting stuff. Okay, just for future list attendees. So I'm gonna share my screen again, and thank you so much, Tyler, for answering those questions and power through that. Okay. So if you guys have been enjoying Future List so far and you want more experiences like this, definitely consider becoming a member and being initiated into our little cult family, because you can stream over 20 hours of recordings that we have, including future list recordings that are going to be uploaded into our members area if you don't have time to stream it today. We also have tons of downloadables, speaker slides, printables there for you. You don't have to pay any entry fees to upskilling experiences, because we do have workshops like this and more outside of Future List every single month. And we also have members only promos that you can't get anywhere else. So this is the membership discounts that I want to show you guys, and it's only going to be up until tomorrow. Okay, so only for Future List attendees that are here today. On the left, I'm just going to explain what you see. So on the left is our monthly plan, which is 10% off at 36 ringgit, and you can scan the QR code there if you're interested. You get all of the membership plans, the benefits that I mentioned before, or you can look at the one on the right, which is 20% off our annual plan. And that actually amounts to only 26 ringgit per month, which is about like 2 Starbucks lattes if you think about it. So if you want a taster of Cult Creative and a bit of what our platform does outside of it and our upskilling experiences, then you can explore our monthly plan. But if you're ready to commit, and 2021 is coming to an end, and you want to start the next year right, then you want to commit to a whole year of upskilling experiences, then definitely explore our annual plan, because we've never done a promo like this before, and it's only going to be until tomorrow. So yeah, scan those QR codes if you are interested. And speaking of experiences, if you want to join one of our workshops outside of Future List, you can join the one that we are partnering with General Assembly for. It's all about UX design, and our speaker is going to be Nicholas Hahn from Media Monks. Members, as I mentioned, will get it for free. So you can scan the QR code here, or the normal price will be 45 ringgit. But only the first 20 members will get the free kind of entry. So definitely think fast and grab it while you can. So yeah, and Tyler mentioned a lot of like profile tips on how to have a personal banner and what to say and whatnot. And I think that's really, really great, and something that you can even apply on our app. So I mentioned before that Cult Creative, we have a beta app, and it's live in the App Store right now, actually. So you can scan the QR code or just search up Cult Creative in your App Store, and it should come up. We're still developing it at the moment, but it'll be really great for you guys to download it and let us know what you think. And also, put those profile tips that you learned from Tyler into good use, because you're able to create your profile. As you can see here, our key features, digitize your portfolio, put your own personal banner up there as well, connect with other creatives, and our job board is also up there, where you can find specifically creative jobs anywhere from internships, freelance, part-time to full-time. So we even have some employers from Future List today up on our job board, and more will be added. So yeah, and if you want to continue to keep up to date with the latest developments and events from Cult Creative, these are our socials that you can follow us on. And yeah, I will leave this here. And thank you so much. I will end it here. Thank you so much to Tyler for coming here and sharing with us all of your tips. The recording for this will be up in our members area for members to watch, as well as his deck as well. And yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you in our next one, which is the members mentorship office hours, which will be happening very, very shortly at 12:30. My colleague will be dropping the feedback form in the chat box. So if you enjoyed everything that you learned from Tyler today, he's been absolutely amazing. Let us know, let Tyler know, and put in your ratings in the feedback form. We would love to know what you guys liked about it, how else we can improve to better curate experiences for you guys in the future. We will also be dropping the Zoom links for other future upcoming Future List experiences. If you want to drop in any one of them, please just click and you will be in. So yeah, those are the links that are in there. Let me see. Yes, the feedback form is in the chat box. I can see. Thank you so much. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Alia. Yeah, I'm just, and Angeline. Yeah, I'm just reading all of your comments.